Good morning everyone. We're on chapter 4 of Bill's new frock today. Shall we find out if Bill's day gets any better? Here we go then. Chapter 4. No pockets. Perhaps Miss Collins noticed how fed up he looked. Perhaps she was grateful for him sitting so still for so long and being so pink. Or maybe it was just Bill's eye she happened to catch first. But, whatever the reason, it was Bill Simpson she chose to take her spare key back to the office. "That's helpful of you," she said, pressing the key into his hand. "Just give it to Mrs. Banderina. She's expecting it. And hurry back." Everyone else looks at from their maths books and watches enviously as he left the classroom and shut the door firmly behind him. Outside, in the deserted corridor, one thought and one thought only was in Bill Simpson's mind. Lavatories. Silently he crept along. Should he turn left into the boys and risk hoots and catcalls of astonishment if anyone caught him in there in his pretty pink frock? Or should he turn right into the girls, where for a boy even to be found hanging around in the doorway was to risk terrible trouble? Girls' lavatories were more private. At least he could struggle with his frock in peace. Bill made his choice, peering back over his shoulder like some spy from an old black and white film. He scuttled hastily into the girls'. There he is. Making sure no one's watching. When, 2 minutes later, he stuck his head back out through the swinging doors, the corridor was still empty. Sighing with relief, Bill stepped out. He took his time now, dawdling along towards the school office, swinging the key from his fingers and stopping to peer at each painting on the wall. After his heart-stopping rush in and out of the girls' lavatories, Bill reckoned that it earned a break. But just as he turned the corner, who should he see backing out of a cupboard but the head teacher? Bill Simpson started looking sharp. Lifting his chin, he walked a lot faster. He was almost safely past the headmaster when he was stopped. A hand fell on top of his head. "You look very responsible and sensible," the head teacher said. "Not dawdling along, peering at all the paintings, taking your time. Are you going to the office on an errand for your teacher? Would you do me a favour and take these coloured inks to Mrs. Bandarina?" And he held out a handful of tiny glass bottles. Bill put out his free hand, and the head teacher tipped the tiny glass bottles onto his outstretched palm. "Whatever you do, don't drop them," he warned, and then he dived back in his cupboard. Bill went on. He'd hardly reached the short flight of stairs when the school nurse came up them the other way, carrying a pile of yellow forms in her arms and walking faster than most people run. "Ah," she said, spotting Bill. "Just what I need. Someone who can take these medical forms to the office for me, so I can rush straight across to the nursery before the bell rings." She didn't exactly ask, and she didn't exactly wait to see if Bill minded. She just thrust a stack of yellow medical forms into his arms and hurried off. "And they're in perfect alphabetical order," she called back over her shoulder. "So, whatever you do, don't drop them." Problem, thought Bill. One false move and everything would fall to the floor. Spare key, little glass ink bottles, medical forms in perfect alphabetical order. The lot. The key and the coloured inks would just have to go in his pockets. Pockets. Carefully, Bill squatted in the corridor and lowered the pile of yellow medical forms to the floor, taking care that he didn't lose the key or drop the little glass bottles of coloured ink. Then he felt all around the pretty pink frock for a pocket. He pushed and shoved at frilly places here and there, wherever he thought there might be one hidden. But though he heard the material rip once or twice, and he felt his hands go through the holes he'd accidentally torn. There were no pockets there. No, not one pocket. Acres of material, masses of it, pleats, frills, bows, scallops, fancy loops, but not one pocket. Whoever designed the dress had gone to all the trouble of matching the imitation lace round the hem with the imitation lace round the collar, and fitting a zip in so neatly that it was practically invisible, and putting comfortable elastic around the little puffy sleeves. But they just hadn't bothered to put in a pocket. Bill was amazed. How was a person in a frock like this supposed to survive? How were they expected to get along without any pockets? It can't have been the only dress of its kind. Other people must wear them. Where did they put their money, for heaven's sake? Did they keep it all damp and hot and sticky in the palms of their hand all day? Where did they put their sweets their friend gave them if they wanted to save them for later? What did they do if someone returned their pencil sharpener to them outside in break? How can you live without pockets? How can you? How can you? Bill put his head in his hands and groaned. Then he tried to pull himself together. This couldn't last forever. This couldn't go on. No boy could turn into a girl and stay that way without anyone, even his mother and teacher and school friends, noticing any real difference. It must be a bad dream. It felt like a nightmare. He'd just keep calm and steady and wait till the horror of it was over. He'd just get on with the job in hand. And the job in hand was to get all these things safely to the school office. Bill gathered up the yellow medical forms. On top of them he put the coloured inks right in the middle so they would not roll over the edge and smash on the floor. And he wedged the key between the inks so it would not slide off the side. Then, very carefully, he started down the corridor again towards the office. Before he'd gone a dozen steps, he heard a rapping on the nearest window. He turned to look. It was the caretaker. The caretaker leaned through the window. "Off to the office, are you?" he asked. "Do me a favour. Take these tennis balls with you. Ask Mrs. Bandaria to lock them away." And before Bill could agree, the caretaker tipped 7 tennis balls onto the carefully stacked pile in Bill's arm. Uh-oh. I think we all know what's going to happen. Bill stood for a moment, steadying his load. He let the medical forms dip in a bit in the middle to make a sort of hollow to keep the balls together and stop them rolling off over the side. Then, even more carefully than before, step by tiny, gentle step, he made for the office again. When he was only a short way away, he saw Mrs. Bandaria lift her head from the computer, glance through the open doorway, and notice him shuffling towards her. Each step seemed to take forever. Everything in his pile seemed to be wobbling dangerously. Everything in his pile seemed to be sliding closer to the edge. "My," said Mrs. Bandaria, watching his snail-slow progress. "Aren't you the careful one, taking such care not to spill the coloured ink on your sweet little frock?" It wasn't Bill's fault. It was because she said the word "sweet little frock." A shudder of pure fury rose through his body and made his hands shake. He didn't know the yellow forms were going to slip from his grasp or slither out of alphabetical order across the floor. He didn't know the little glass bottles would fall and smash. He didn't know that 7 tennis balls would bounce up and down in the bright coloured pools of spilt ink. He didn't know that the spare key would end up submerged in a puddle of purple. Bill Simpson tried very hard not to narrow his eyes at Mrs. Bandaria and blame her for everything as she slid off her office chair to help him. He tried very hard to look grateful as she swept a handful of tissues out of her box on her desk and helped him to mop and wipe and gather rainbow-spotted tennis balls. And he tried to look pleasant while she tipped the slivers of shattered glass into the waste basket and helped him shuffle all the medical forms back into alphabetical order. But once back in the corridor again and alone, he couldn't help muttering something quite rude and quite loudly about the sort of person who would design a pretty pink frock with no pockets and expect other people to go round wearing it. There he is, looking quite annoyed. Poor Bill. His day's not getting any better, is it? I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. Shall we see what it's called? Chapter 5 is called The Big Fight. I hope Bill doesn't get involved in this fight. What is going to happen to his beautiful pink dress if he gets involved in a fight as well? There's going to be nothing left of it by the end of the day if it carries on like this. I still don't know if this is a dream. I hope it is a dream for Bill's sake, because I don't think I'd like to be Bill right now. So I look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow for Chapter 5, The Big Fight. I hope you're enjoying this book as much as I am. Take care now. Bye.